So welcome back to Not Normal, a channel where we talk about addiction and all the things around it. So as mental health, anxiety, depression, things which are perfectly normal but just not talked about enough. So what is rehab like? It's a strange thing after, I don't know, about 8 months or so of real addiction, of waking up in the morning, messaging my dealer, and after spending thousands of pounds a week, it was only when I was walking to my first rehab meeting that I thought to myself, oh my God, I'm like a proper drug addict. Rehab meetings are things that drug addicts go to. And addicts were something which I knew from film, from TV. And it was quite a scary and I guess quite deluded thought that it was the act of going to rehab, it was the act of seeking help, which made me an addict. So after looking at the different websites, I found the rehab place that I seemed to like the look of the most and was most convenient and easiest to get to. And I went down there and they just initially took some notes about what my story was, how I felt, my background, in the same way that if you went to see a doctor for the first time, they might ask. And then they made an appointment for me to have a one-to-one kind of induction where I went back and they showed me around their place, so I was comfortable in their building. They took me through the process and they listened to my concerns. It was good to be able to unload a bit and to speak to somebody who wasn't a friend or who wasn't a family member, someone I could just say the proper horrible things. And they took me through the process. They set me up with weekly one-to-one meetings. I had like a kind of caseworker, and the idea of that is to do some CBT. CBT stands for Cognitive Behavioural Therapy. It's just a process where you talk and it helps you manage your problems. I think my weekly meetings probably veered towards more just building up my own self-esteem and showing to myself that I had the power. So in addition to these one-to-one meetings, there was also weekly preparing to change meetings. Out of the whole rehab process, this is the thing I probably struggled with the most. It's the one that kind of offenders are sent to. A certain amount I found were kind of ticking boxes and weren't really invested in making a change. Perhaps that was a front that they were putting up. I don't know, but there was one time where a guy turned up and it was his first meeting he'd ever been to, and he'd been taking drugs for 36 years. 36 years and he'd never got any help before. And these young guys kind of joked about him and riled him up so much that he just walked out. He didn't feel very safe there, obviously, and you know, that's what these places should be. They're safe environments where you should be able to say what you want to say and it stays in that room. Some week I'd turn up and there'd be like 4 people there because it was quite a small group. Some weeks I'd be the only person there. Yeah, they talk about stress coping mechanisms, the wheel of change. You know, you kind of go around preparing to change, maintaining sobriety. Then you have like lapses, which would be like a kind of a day or two, and then you have relapses, which are proper like long-term drug use again. It's just information like that, and you go away with lots of A4 sheets of paper about you know, what kind of words shouldn't you use, how you should be more positive. Just things like that, lots of leaflets. So then I went on to the maintaining sobriety, and that was a larger group of people. I would go, I don't know, once a week. You turn up to the group and you get breathalyzed. It's part of the deal that you need to be free from alcohol to be in the building. So there was like one time where they had to eject somebody because, you know, they did have alcohol in their blood. You would go around a room and you would say, how long you've been clean of drugs, and they would put it on a whiteboard and you'd get a clap. They would do a reading from a book of recovery, and you discuss what's been talked about in that. It could be a poem or whatever. You talk about the things in there and what you take from it, how they relate to you. And then after that, you would go around the group and you would, just talk about your week, talk about the challenges that have faced you, how you dealt with them, what you plan to do the next week, what might be a problem for you next week. You listen to other people doing the same. You're able to, make suggestions. You don't want to interrupt people. Obviously, you want to let everyone have their own say. And it was a hugely rewarding place, and there were some really good people that were there. There's people I learnt a lot from. There's people that I wouldn't usually mix with because I would go, that's white van man. I have nothing in common with him. There are some things which are universal in that group. Obviously, it was having a problem with booze or was having a problem with drugs. Some of those people were alcoholics and they'd come from residential rehabs. They'd gone onto there. They'd done the whole drying out in hospital thing. And you would have a break and you have tea. And it was a good communal, it was a good place to go to. Your social circle can shrink quite dramatically in those early stages, and it provides a different kind of social circle, a more constructive one, where they're not really necessarily worried about what you're seeing on TV. It's more about how are you feeling? And they really cut through to the core and the core of the problem. In addition to that, there was another group I went to, and that was Living in Recovery. So that was some place that you could go to, and it was a much bigger group, but it was one where you could go to for a longer period of time. It doesn't have the focused readings, and because it is a bigger group, you just check in and say how your week's been. So there would be people going to that group that were no longer going to maintaining sobriety. You would see different groups of people at each meetings. Sometimes there would be overlaps and you hear the same story twice. You can have someone telling you something which happened to them but they found quite funny and people could laugh. And then it would go to the next person in the group and she may have had her kids taken off of her, or they may have just got out of prison. They may be appearing in court very soon for something that they've done. The moods can shift really quickly in a group, and it really makes you realise the fragility of all of this. There could have been someone who's been homeless for a while. That's something I would walk down the street and think, I'm that close to being homeless. You can get sponsors there if you want to. You can swap numbers with people. It's not something that I think they endorse, but it's something that you can do. I did swap phone numbers with one person. Sadly, that person passed away, which was obviously horrible. I mean, I wasn't really a friend of hers, but it was very close to home. Whilst I had a few overdoses myself, you don't really acknowledge how close you are to death. Exchanges at these groups and these encounters, which makes you realise the severity of the situation. You're not there to talk about how you're going to be an addict forever and how horrible and how shit life is, and it's there as a positive thing where you can talk about your problems to get solutions, to be offered hope, to be offered assistance, to be offered education. I would come out of groups and feel quite drained, but always feeling like I've benefited so much from these groups. Rehab is hugely important because people stop asking. They stop asking about how you're doing. People will stop asking about how you're feeling. People will stop asking about how you can handle life. They won't necessarily be able to help you because they've not been there. They won't have answers for you. Rehab is a place where you can go and you can get answers. Rehab is a place where you can go where you can learn about yourself. Rehab is a place where you can go, where you can learn about others. Rehab is a place you go to learn how to handle your problems. Rehab is a place to go where you can meet people who you can relate to. My group, they had a Christmas party. I've not been to many Christmas parties where I've had to be breathalyzed before it starts, but there was no queue to use a bathroom. It's not a complete solution, but it provides you with some answers. It tells you how you can help yourself. The first step is to just Google and find a phone number and call them. There are private rehabs you can go to. There are publicly funded, government funded rehabs that you can go to. There are residential rehabilitations where you can stay there for up to, 6 to 8 months. There are weekly ones like the ones I went to. There are ones where you can go to like Tibet and it's almost like a retreat. Rehab can doubtlessly be many things and it comes in many forms. But ultimately they're about listening to you and helping you. And that's the important thing, is help. And they're a very real way of providing that. And it's something I miss. Rehab is something I miss.